He's just a year out of college, and he's already one of the most sought-after election forecasters in the nation. Chaz Nuttycombe has taken the political prediction world by storm, and he's getting even more attention now for how remarkably accurate his polls were compared to others in the most recent Virginia elections. And it all started when he was a teenager. Today, he gives us the untold story of how he's navigated his way to the top of the polling profession.
Unusual guest. He's a bit of a prodigy. 26-year-old election forecaster from Hanover, Virginia. He's a local guy. But you're making big national headlines for doing very interesting work predicting state legislative races. And you've had a lot of success at that. So congrats.
Thank you.
How'd this last go around suit you? Did you do well?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
I think this is the first time I've been on CBS 6. Yeah, we did pretty well this year, especially in our polling. There was only one other pollster by margin of victory, YouGov, that did better than us for the governor race. They had Spanberger by 15. We had 13 in both of our surveys. And of every pollster, and this was our first time we actually did a poll, of every pollster that asked about the races here in Virginia for governor and lieutenant governor and attorney general, we did the best. And in our forecast, which uses fundamentals such as what is the president's approval rating, what are some of the recent election results, what's the economy like, what about unemployment, inflation since the beginning of the president's term, all that sort of thing. We had Spanberger by, I believe it was 11.2%. She won by 15.3 just about. So we did pretty well, and we would have done even better because we also use polling for the non-fundamentals part of the forecast. The forecast would have done better if other pollsters were as accurate as ours.
So you predicted Spanberger as governor, Hashmi as lieutenant governor, and Jay Jones as AG.
Yep.
And you also did New Jersey's as well. Were you 100% on their ticket too?
Well, we weren't as accurate in Jersey as we were in Virginia, and that's because we just kind of threw Jersey together. We spent a lot of time on Virginia. We went back to 2005, looking at just as we did the fundamentals part with presidential approval and the economy, just to see how closely correlated those indicators are with results. We didn't really do that much for that in Jersey. And also polling in Jersey was worse than it was in Virginia. So and that's because a lot of them waited to like 2021 and 2024 instead of trying to guess the actual electorate in 2025. There's a little bit more of that for guessing what the 2025 electorate would look like in Virginia. So that's why we did a little bit better, because we are all kind of in the same boat with pollsters and whatnot. So I think we had Cheryl winning, Mickey Sherrill, the Democratic nominee for governor, winning by like 5 or 6. She won by 12 or 13, something like that. And then I think we missed 6 seats, unfortunately, in the General Assembly forecast we had there, which is their lower chamber. So here in Virginia, we call the General Assembly for like everything. General Assembly over there in Jersey is just for the lower chamber. And though that's a very tough chamber to predict because of multi-member districts. And so we're trying to pretty much test in these MMDs, multi-member districts, which one, just via what methods are going to be best to try and forecast the outcome of those seats. I think it did pretty decent this year. And we'll see how it performs in 2026 in those kind of states. So,
to be clear, people have a lot of questions about, the methods of pollsters because they're so often wrong. I mean, I think all of the polls, or most of the polls, had Jason Miyares winning for AG here in Virginia. I would say you must have been sort of an outlier to suggest that Jay Jones was still going to win. in your methodology separated you from all those other pollsters that got that race wrong? Like, what was it that convinced you that he was going to win?
Sure. Well, what I like to say, just when it comes to my job as a forecaster and now a pollster, I work with a brilliant polling committee, two folks who were at 538, including their most recent, head honcho, GLA Morris, Mary Radcliffe, who is also our staff. She's our data manager, and she will get any poll release that comes out pretty much before anybody else in the country. So she's an absolute weapon. Love her. She's brilliant. And as well as my old professor at Virginia Tech, Nick Geddert, who did polling before he went into academia. Michael Foley, our elections coordinator, who is also very much a weapon in terms of how much of a jack of all trades he is. And so this was kind of our first rodeo, and we did really well.
The first time you had this A+ team together was this past election?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we did statewide polls. We also did state legislative district polls. So what separated us from the rest of the pack, and again, what I like to say as a forecaster and pollster is I don't care about who wins. I care about being right. Right. And people, I also like to say nobody likes the ref. you know? There were, when we released that poll, we had a whole bunch of people who were not happy, particularly on the right. Got my first death threat. Which
How did that come to you? Via email or?
No, over X, over Twitter, and somebody was like, you better be armed and watch your back or something.
Wow.
Which, as somebody who's been forecasting elections for 8 years, I'm kind of surprised that this is what finally did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of the other pollsters were, we put out this article, and you can find it on State Navigate, for kind of our take for why we did better than the rest of the pack more often than not. They weighed to previous electorates that were going to be redder than what was going to happen this year. And every Virginia governor election year, there's always been an electorate that's more favorable to the out party via a turnout advantage.
Was that the case this time around too?
Yes.
Yeah.
So in all likelihood, for example, in 2021, Virginia voted for Biden by about 10 points, 10.11%. It more likely than not only voted for Biden in the actual 2021 electorate by about 3%. This year, in 2024, Kamala Harris won Virginia by 5.78%. And more likely than not, this electorate in Virginia voted for Kamala Harris by, I would say, probably 12%. Maybe on the low end, 11%. So that's what we, as someone who has studied Virginia history, this is what we were expecting. Pollsters such as VCU, they decided to weigh to the electorate of 2021. Which I had hated and hoed about for people who were doing this, that they would be wrong. And this isn't to try and brag or boast. Like, at the end of the day, if they're inaccurate, it hurts our forecast, right? Because we still include their polls in our forecast, even if we disagree with them.
You want their methodology to be right so you can be more right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're all in the same boat, and
you're looking at things like sample size, and you're looking at their methodology as they're doing it as well, and I'm sure factoring that into like what weight you give their numbers.
Yeah, we weight by like sample size, yes, in terms of like the forecast. Also, like, is it a partisan poll? Is it a nonpartisan poll? We give partisan polls less weight. So for like 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of the month, it was primarily these like Republican polls coming out showing Jason Miyares with a very wide lead. And so people were, now the forecast was tightening over the month of October, but in those 2 weeks it wasn't really moving much, and that's because they were predominantly Republican polls, and we give them less weight. We would do the same for any Democratic polls as well.
So taking this position on the Jay Jones race, we sort of put you in a little bit of hot water, it sounds like. I mean, the death threat, and then there was obviously some pushback, I guess, from other Republican pollsters or people in your circles. Did you, at that point, when you were getting that pushback, did you still feel absolutely confident in your forecast? Like, okay, be mad, but this guy's going to win. I mean, is that how you felt?
Yeah, and the end of our forecast, there was like a 2 in 3 chance that Jay Jones was going to win. He actually outperformed it by maybe 4 or 5 points on the margin.
Okay.
So Jason Mieres had like a 1 in 3 chance, of winning. I've seen those 1 in 3 chances happen all the time. I've been working with Jack Kirsting, our development director, who is also just very brilliant, much more smarter than me, and very creative since 2021. And then I've been forecasting as a hobby for state legislative elections since 2017 when I was 18. I've seen major upsets happen bigger than like a 1 in 3 chance. But at the end of the day, if anybody would ask me, whether publicly or privately, who do you think wins this, I absolutely kept saying Jay Jones. Because at the end of the day, there was going to be this big turnout advantage, bigger than what our polls or forecasts had showed and what I had imagined. In our final forecast article, I noted that the range of outcomes for the governor race was going to be Spanberger winning by 9 points on the low end to 15 points on the high end. And so she got, 0.2 or 0.3% past that ceiling. This is kind of similar to what happened in 2021. Youngkin had a ceiling of 2 points, and he won by 1.94%. So
did you predict him to win that race too?
Yes. Yes. In 2021, though, we did miss. And these were, back in 2021, it was qualitative analysis rather than a quantitative model. So actually, these were the first quantitative statewide forecast for Virginia that we had worked on. And they did pretty well, and we're excited as State Navigate continues to expand nationally. We're up in 5 states right now. We've opened up shop, and we're going to be replicating this throughout the country, and as well as the other slew of data we provide, the features that we provide, and the work that we do.
So at your nonprofit, there are a handful of people, 6, 8, how many people work there?
For staff, we have 5. We have myself. We have our managing editor, Allie Geyer, who is also a Richmonder. We have Jack Kirsting, our development director, and my co-forecaster. Allie is also our Virginia correspondent. We have Michael Foley, who is our elections coordinator. I worked with him on our polling, worked with him. He scrapes a lot of the election data, does a whole bunch of stuff. And then we have Mary Radcliffe, who is our data manager. She had recently joined the team in the beginning of the year. Everybody else, I've been working with for a while. And then, we have a board of directors as a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit, 2 of which are former Virginia legislators. A Democrat, Mike Mullen from the Peninsula, is our vice chair, and former Republican delegate Bob Thomas, who was from Stafford and now he lives in Florida, is our chair. And then we have our committees, a political and data science committee of volunteers, a state government and journalism advisory committee, most of which are Virginia-based. And we're looking to try and to remedy that as we try and expand nationally to get more perspectives from other states going forward. And we have a small development committee. Elliot's on it. And we'll see what we want to do with that in the future.
So your goal is to forecast every national state legislative race and have that information be accessible to anyone who wants to get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our modus operandi is that data should be a right and not a privilege, and not just on election forecasting. Look, obviously forecasts are shiny and they grab attention, and everybody wants to know what we have on forecasting, particularly for Virginia, because we have a very good track record here, but also nationally. But we do a whole bunch of other data too. We are calculating where the ideology is for each legislator in every state legislative chamber in the country, and that's using their actual floor roll call votes. So seeing where every legislator is in relation to one another. And it's kind of boring for Virginia, where it's like, okay, all the Democrats on one side of the screen and all the Republicans on the other. But when you get to a state like Wyoming, where you have a Freedom Caucus, where it looks like all the Freedom Caucus Republicans are on one side of the screen, and all the establishment Republicans, rhinos, whatever you want to call them, are on one side.
Divides within the party.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we do that. We collect campaign finance data for candidates, so you're able to see how much they've raised, spent, and what their cash on hand is, who's donated to them, who they've spent money on, for their vendors. We aggregate news from the state newsrooms for those that are left. Unfortunately, as that is a shrinking industry throughout my lifetime.
You have to have a lot of information, to kind of boil in that pot. You know what I mean? It's not like, I think people think that, there's a poll and you ask people who they're going to vote for, and then you take the numbers and you aggregate it, and okay, fine. But what you're doing is a much more, it seems to me, cumulative approach where you're taking in all of these factors, all of these influences, all of these circumstances. I mean, I'm sure you guys were watching the news of the J. Jones October surprises happen and thinking to yourself like, oh, this throws the whole thing into a different, we're going to have to factor in, as you were saying, taking in news, right? You got to factor in like things happen and they affect the trajectory of the race and people's thoughts on the candidates. Like we got to put that in the mix. It's like it's a lot of information. Is it mostly math? I mean, is it mostly numbers that you're considering? It seems like you're a numbers wizard. You seem to have you always had that ability to just like numerically state things?
I love Google Sheets. I like making spreadsheets.
Yeah. Were you good at math always?
It's funny. I really only have a basic understanding of math.
Terrible at math. I'm the worst. I'm a journalist, so I mean that goes without saying. But
but it's just I
always admire people. Like even as you're listing off these house districts, I'm like, how does he remember that that's the number that goes with that district? I mean,
and what's funny is that there are members of the Virginia General Assembly who don't know these other numbered seats.
Yeah. I'm sure.
And I have to work on that.
Like the speaker doesn't know as many numbered districts as you do. I mean, that's like
I have to work on that because my job is to not seem. I think somebody on Twitter kind of replied and described it accurately as like insider baseball talk.
Wonky. You don't want to be too wonky. Yeah.
So and that's kind of one of the things is like, we don't want this to be complicated in getting this data. Mm-hmm. For example. I mean, just some of these state governments in these other states, we're very privileged in Virginia, and part of it is because we're wealthy and we invest in our bureaucracy, and we really try hard with good governance. But some of these other states, it's really hard to get data. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I hear from like state legislators.
Like campaign finance data?
Yeah, for example, campaign finance.
Like VPAP is, I'm sure, really helpful to you. Do you use them often for all their...
So yeah, VPAP was integral to the beginning of my career. Mm-hmm. I remember being in like my school newspaper class and looking at their maps of the 2017 results and whatnot. We had bought a little bit of campaign finance data for them for a project that was useful for our modeling and figuring out what is the effective campaign finance spending in Virginia. We're working on trying to get those results out. I handed it over to a political science professor on our committee. But we have our own approach to things in our own work. We do stuff that VPAP doesn't do. VPAP does stuff that
they're more
we
on
don't
like
do.
the transparency finance side of things. I only mention them as a reporter. I've used them a lot, and if you need to quickly find campaign information, it's a wonderful resource. I'm not sure, much like your mission, I think their biggest goal is to have that information at people's fingertips so they can make good decisions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we do, we have the same kind of mission to where, we just want every state government to be transparent and accessible. Our goal, I think the biggest differentiator between us and them is that we want to go national. They're more focused in Virginia, which I think is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some of these other state governments to where it's a part of it, again, when we talk about the lack of investment in bureaucracy as being the reason for a lack of data accessibility and transparency, even for these political insiders or, the average user, that's one part. But another part could just be because of corruption. I think the best example would be in Hawaii. which is probably the most corrupt state government in the country.
Really?
Yes. For example, in Hawaii, as far as we are aware, you cannot find out and pull information for how your legislator voted on the floor for legislation. And I had
There's just no record of it, or like.
Yeah, you can't get it online or anything. Maybe if you're there, I don't know. But I've talked with other groups.
They don't record their votes in any meaningful way that's accessible.
It's not published.
Interesting.
So yeah,
if you wanted to see like how has
there's committee votes, but not floor roll call votes, and only some committee votes, as far as I'm aware.
But committee votes don't really mean much,
Correct.
It doesn't get out of committee.
It needs to get to the floor.
Right.
So I had tweeted out that Hawaii. I had done a little test because I think my audience on X skews more liberal, which is unfortunate because ideally we would like for it to be even because again we don't have a dog in any fight. But I had tweeted out, well, which state do you think is more corrupt, Texas or Hawaii? And the answer is Hawaii. And I noted that Hawaii was the most corrupt.
Did your followers get after you on that? Were they upset with you for that?
Not really. But there was this funny comment where somebody was like, "You're Howley," which is like a pejorative for white mainlander. So I'm getting called like somewhat of a slur for thinking that people should know how their legislators are voting.
Right.
Which was really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so getting back to the point, we want to shine a light and open the door for every state government in the country, so that the average person can know anything that they want on their state government, and kind of in the way, and also keeping it free, in the way I guess kind of like Wikipedia is, because you shouldn't have to pay for data on your state government. I mean, look, there's so much investment at the federal level and attention and everything, right? I mean, your local newspaper now, if you are privileged to have one, is probably more likely to talk about Taylor Swift. At least this was, when she was on tour and everything, than they are for like what's going on in the state capitol. And it's depressing. That's one of the things we want to do is eventually we'd love to hire more state house reporters nationally. I mean, I have like a 2 or 3 page Google document of all the ways I would like for State Navigate to expand. But, first off, we just want to keep opening up in more states. We're opened up in Virginia, second state we launched in. We launched in South Carolina a month before, Utah by August, Wisconsin and West Virginia in the beginning of October, middle of October for West Virginia. And I think we're maybe a week away or less from launching in Alaska. Going forward, it's only going to take like maybe 1 to 3 weeks to get out the rest of these states for each. So that's kind of my main goal as executive director, is pushing us to where we're going to be able to get out in those states and continuing to find like-minded individuals to keep supporting our work and donating, giving us grants to make sure that everybody can get this data for free instead of insiders and lobbyists and all that just being able to get that data because they can afford to.
That's a great point to take a break. We're going to hit pause for a second. When we come back, we're going to talk about your early interest in politics and how you got on this journey. We'll be right back.
If you're enjoying Untold, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also rate and follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
So, are you more interested in politics, or are you more interested in prediction, forecasting? Like, do you have an inherent interest in the actual policy of politics, or is it just like, I can use these determinations to predict something?
I would say not necessarily. I mean, look.
Are you a political guy?
I have political opinions, but I would say it's not really important to me in my work. And there's not really much that I feel strongly on nowadays, quite frankly. I mean, at the end of the day, what I feel strongly on and gets me out of bed in the morning is just trying to get out this data and get out this work for these states. So, I mean, part of that, yes, is forecasting, working on the forecast and everything, and being as pinpoint accurate as we can, and licking our wounds on any times that we have a miss, seeing why we were wrong, and trying to always strive to do better, right? Focus on your losses and not your wins, and that's true for us this year. So, like for example, we're looking at. Jack and I, our development director and co-forecaster, we're working on trying to toy around with, okay, maybe we weighted polling too much because our fundamentals model did really well. It predicted Spanberger plus 15. If we had weighted that a little more in our forecast, we would have done much better. So just determining that. But you know what? I think so. I'm not really interested in
but
policy.
You're not a political animal. Like you're not watching every detail of what's happening on CNN and
absolutely
C-SPAN
not. I don't watch cable.
Okay.
I don't.
You don't engage in any of that. Like
no.
I mean, because I do. I'm kind of like wonky. I love politics. I love following it. We had former Lieutenant Governor Bill Bowling in here before the election, and I just sat here and could pick his brain all day long on. What he thinks about Virginia politics.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like those details. But when I listen to you, it sounds like, the game is the game of forecasting and understanding all this data in a meaningful way is
sure.
more interesting to you than the policy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing I guess on policy that would be interesting to me is, I guess, kind of in a political science perspective. For the ideology of state legislatures, right? I mean, I did my senior thesis in college on the Freedom Caucus in the Western states, titled All Right on the Western Front. So it focused on Wyoming and Idaho and North Dakota and South Dakota, which are very interesting states because 3 out of 4 of them have a Freedom Caucus. One of them, North Dakota, has something that were called the Bastiat Caucus in 2012. So I'm really interested in those inter-party divides.
So the divides are fascinating to you, but generally speaking, you're not like a Politico. That's not your brand.
I mean, in W Nominate, which is our, it's not our methodology or formula, but it's been around for 35 years. It was made for Congress. And so this is what they have is they made it for Congress, and you can find out the ideology on an x-axis, which is liberal versus conservative, and y-axis, which is kind of pretty much everything else. Can measure how progressive, libertarian someone is, right? So AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene on the bottom, AOC here, Marjorie Taylor Greene here. There's stuff in Nominate besides just the overall plots. To where you can figure out the likelihood that they're going to vote yay or nay on a bill using all of their other previous roll call votes during that session or in the past and whatnot. And then it's interesting to see those votes where it divides both parties. So, for example, in Virginia, and we would call that a second dimensional vote. This is kind of getting a little wonky here, but in Virginia, for example, the bill for the casino, right? That started out in the Senate, pretty much split casino in Tyson's Corner Casino, I want to say it was. It pretty much got 50% just about in each party in the Senate. So that was really interesting, especially when you think about gambling. I feel like gambling, pretty much all Republicans were against gambling maybe a decade or so ago, but now in Virginia, or even West Virginia now. It's kind of splitting the parties. You have some pro-gambling Democrats and anti-gambling Democrats and vice versa. So those issues that split the parties are really interesting to me. But it's not I'm interested in this policy because it's I want it to happen. It's just as a political scientist,
an observer of this. Yeah. I mean,
right. What unites the parties?
Right.
Right. What unites them? What divides them?
Did you always know this was going to be your path? I mean, at what point? Were you a child saying I want to predict elections, or did you?
It's funny because so it started out as a hobby when I was a teenager, and I really owe it to my father. It was like 2012 was the first time I tried to predict a presidential election, and I want to say it was. I'm trying to remember what states I had Romney winning, but I predicted that Mitt Romney was going to win. He didn't. I grew up in a conservative household.
There are some influences.
Yeah, there's some influence there. I was 13.
Yeah.
And then 2016 predicted that Trump would win via a different path. It was by winning like Colorado and New Hampshire rather than the Midwest. But it wasn't until 2017 that it became sort of a hobby. And the reason it became a hobby was because nobody else wanted to do it. There was for the only professional that I saw, professional forecaster was Dave Wasserman of the Cook Political Report, who has kind of I look up to as like a role model. I think I really in my profession have like three role models. Him, Ben Tribbett, a Democratic consultant from Northern Virginia. He's brilliant, also much funnier than me. And David Shore, who's like a Democratic analyst, and very, very smart, all three of them. But when I would say, so it started as a hobby when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I was very much like a cheerleader for Democrats, quite frankly.
In a conservative household.
Yes.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And so like
there's your divide. Maybe that's why you're interested in the divided house.
Yeah, well, I mean, we never, my folks and I never really had much friction on politics and whatnot.
What do they think of this gig now? Are they excited for you?
They've always been deeply supportive of my work, and I very much appreciated them. But yeah, so I was like a cheerleader and did some Democratic campaign work, and then by 2020, I decided that one, I wasn't very good at campaign world, and I think it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I kind of became more independent minded, and a little jaded on politics.
Yeah. It's a nasty business, especially now. I feel like it's we were talking with Bill Bowling about sort of the tone and dignity of modern politics and how it's just gotten kind of ugly. It kind of
I would push back on that. I think that this is something that we've heard pretty much since the inception of America. When we think about like, the founding fathers were such great men, and we kind of deitize them because they were Constitution, started the country and whatnot, right? And they talked fancier, but they hated each other when we talk about these political divides. Just I would say as much as we do now. There's plenty of stories on Jefferson versus Adams, the painting where they're stepping on each other's toes during the signing of the Constitution, right, or Declaration of Independence, one of the two. And I think the reason why this maybe is a little more prominent in American thoughts now is mainly I would say because of how the parties have changed. So there was this great paper in the 1940s, I believe, that I learned in college that Nick Gettert in a political parties class brought up, where they said the main dysfunction for why Congress is so dysfunctional is actually because the parties are not divided enough. Because you had like conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans and whatnot. And so they said, we need more ideologically cohesive political parties. And now we have that pretty much. There's no Joe Manchins pretty much anymore, except on some areas in the state legislative level there are. And then vice versa with liberal Republicans. So yeah, I don't think that we are. I think it's kind of a media narrative to where we think like, America's so divided, when it's like, you look at, we had a civil war over this.
Yeah. I don't know if divided would be my word. I just think there's a certain dignity that has kind of evaporated over time. And I know about just from my experience as a reporter covering politics, some of the things I heard as sort of awful and slanderous back in 2008 wouldn't even rank as like offensive in 2025. Like, I just feel like the standard of, I don't know, decorum and dignity has sort of like eroded some. I don't know that it's like we hate each other more or we're more divided, but I just think
there have been nastier things politicians have
manners
said.
have sort of left the building a little, in my opinion. From my perspective of covering people and what they're willing to say on camera, I'm always surprised to see where that bar has gone to. But so why not forecast at the federal level? Why only state?
Yeah, so I mean, I did that in, from 2018 to 2024 because, like, at the end of the day, I've always just wanted people to pay attention about state government.
Why?
I mean,
why state? Why do you think it's more important than?
Because more people know what's going on at the federal level and than they do at the state level, and part of that is because declining newsrooms for state newsrooms and whatnot. But I mean, I've seen people get votes and win state legislative office, who, if you knew what they were up to, and it's written about, but just people don't know what they're up to. They still vote for them anyway, and they win. I mean, we're talking. And this is on both sides,
Right.
for I guess, like, scandal plagued candidates. I mean child molesters, wife beaters, and all this sort of thing. And I think that's a little easier now for people to win, especially in these presidential years where you have very high turnout, because people just kind of don't think about what's going on down ballot. They don't pay attention. That's not like our main goal or whatever, right? Is like, well, don't let scandal plague people win. But, we support good governance, and we want open governance and transparency and availability of news and data. So yeah, I mean, we started to drop the federal stuff because, one, it would distract from the work of working on state government. I was born in '99, so I don't know the lyrics of the song. What's that song by TLC? Waterfalls. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Stick to the rivers you used to. Right. So, like, our state legislative forecasts have always done better than the federal anyway. That's our bread and butter, and that's what I care about. I only really, whether it's CAnalysis, the old website that kind of is somewhat of a predecessor to State Navigate, or whether it be when I was doing it as a hobby, it was always to just get people, because I knew that, like, that's going to grab more clicks, right? People want to know, like, who's going to win the presidency, who's going to win Congress, and my aspirations were that, hey, you're now at this site, which, yes, is looking at federal stuff, but now you can look at what's going on in your state government. After 8 years of work, I think I've, with the team at State Navigate, and that, a lot of which were at CAnalysis, have curated this, little niche, this nerd monopoly of people who are interested in state government. And so, decided to just drop it. I mean, it's called State Navigate, not Federal Navigate.
So, as a nonprofit, and you said you're funded by donations, and I'm guessing bipartisan, because
Yes.
you want to say, yeah. What is the earning potential for someone in your line of work? I've no idea. That's why I'm asking. Like, if you work for a nonprofit doing this, like, is anyone in it for the money, or can they be, or is this really more of like?
You're talking about our donors?
Just making money. How does the nonprofit do financially to support? Because you have a pretty big staff, considering. I mean, that, like, this is kind of new-ish. So how does the money part work? Is there somebody that is responsible for, like, telling, staying in touch with donors and getting new donors? Is that part of the business model? I mean, I know it's not a business, but you still have to get paid, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, that's my job as executive director. Is I'm pretty much the main guy for trying to fundraise. Yeah.
How hard is that?
I haven't really been working on the fundraising over, like, September and October. I'm kind of getting back on that grind. Currently we have our funding through the end of January, so it's really crunch time. And we're looking to try and expand our staff by one to try and hire a polling director. We have a lot of interest, given our success this year, of trying to do more polling in statewide elections and state legislative elections. But, with my job and Michael's job, because it was mostly him and I just kind of talking like every day on we're looking at the hour of as these responses were coming in for our surveys. We're not going to have that time because it's I have to focus on, whether it be fundraising or getting out these states and making sure that everything is in tip-top shape at State Navigate. Michael working on getting election data together, right? So, we're looking to hire a part-time polling director. People
are in this because they want to be part of this more than
our team is full of people who are just again, I would say pretty much everyone on the team is smarter than I am, and I'm very privileged by God to be working with these people, and they have a deep-seated passion and desire for open state governments everywhere.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I know most people working for nonprofits are usually I'm doing this because I love this kind of work, and I fully accept that, as you said, at any point, this funding is always tenuous. It's always difficult to know, if I can get a raise next year, if I'm, what that will look like. And I think most people that do it because they really love it. Yeah.
As long as we just have our bare minimum operating cost, to just be able for us to, provide for family and put food on the table. It's just not really, I'm not very a money-oriented person or anything, right? All I care about is just having the resources together, especially because, we're doing this on a national level with such a small staff.
Yeah.
And I would, it's my own opinion, but I think it's pretty impressive with what we've done with how in a matter of 9 months we've put together this framework to where it's okay, now it's only going to take 1 to 3 weeks to get out of the state, depending on how difficult the state is. So we have donors across the aisle who are interested in making that data availability happen. Because at the end of the day, they agree with us that people shouldn't have to pay for data. You can go to our site and not just look at the site, look at the data. And one bit of data that I didn't get to talk about is our district profiles, district summaries, to where you can see the demographics of the district, the candidates in the district, the social media accounts for those candidates, how did it vote in every single precinct by vote margin and percentage margin, all that sort of stuff. And you can go to our site and just download any data that we create and curate, and as you can use it for your own purposes, so long as you're giving us credit where needed. Because people shouldn't have to pay to know what they want to know on their state government.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to. You guys must be very busy. That's all I'm saying. You must be very busy.
Especially right now,
because to keep that machine running, and I'm in news, so I know what that's like. Everyone who works in news, we know that there really is no money in news, right? It's because you love journalism that you do it. But then behind the scenes, there's all these people scurrying around trying to get advertisers, trying to get, just to make sure that keep all the lights turn on, right? So I'm, drawing the comparison that maybe yours is a similar, passion project. You know what I mean? It's sort of something you love deeply.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the future of polling and its successes and failures. We'll be right back.
If you're enjoying Untold, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also rate and follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
So let's talk about polling. Is it me, or are polls less trustworthy than they used to be? I feel like, generally speaking, I hear more and more people sort of anecdotally saying, well, you can't trust the polls, or, the polls say this, but you never know with the polls. Is polling getting more sophisticated, better methodology, or are we going backward?
I think we're getting better. We're getting better polling and methodology. the big lesson from 2016 was that you need to weigh your electorate by education, because there weren't enough people who lacked a college education who were getting in polls. And in 2020, the reason why 2020 was the biggest polling miss since the 1980s, so in 40 years, just about. And the reason for that was pretty much just COVID. I mean, you had liberals staying at home, complying with the lockdowns, answering their phones, whereas Republicans were out and about, not complying with the lockdowns and thus less likely to answer their phones. So that was the reason why 2020 was so off. 2022 was really accurate, underestimated Democrats a little bit. 2018 was really accurate. 2025 was kind of similar to 2017 in that it underestimated Democrats, and I'd already talked about, because they were weighing to 21 and 2024. So, sometimes they underestimate Democrats, sometimes Republicans. I think a lot of it, to the average person, they're frustrated in last three presidential elections, they've overestimated Democrats by 1 degree or another, right?
Definitely in 2024. I mean, most of the polls were not predicting.
Sure, depends on the state. But yeah, definitely did in Arizona, Wisconsin. I want to say Trump was leading in Pennsylvania in the polling averages in the end there. And then, but it was very, very close in the margin of error, we're talking maybe 3% or something. So I get that people want polls to be 100% accurate instead of 90 or 95 or 99. But it's just unless you're going to have a ridiculously large sample size of tens of thousands of respondents, and you have good methodology, I mean, it's just financially
are less
very
people
difficult.
Are less people saying yes to polls? I mean, when you do the polling itself, is it harder to find people to comply?
I mean, there are these non-response biases with some groups, such as non-college folks, people who don't have a college degree. There's difficulty in getting some minority groups or younger voters, right? So, I mean, I guess you could say yes. There are these groups of demographic groups of Americans who have low trust in institutions, and polling is one of them. The media is one of them, right?
I mean, I just think about the Jason Miyares example from this election. I mean, everyone got it wrong. I mean, luckily you didn't, but that was an across the board.
There's something in polling that's a well-known response bias, and so I had noted this. Nick Gettert, the political science professor at Tech that taught me, had this great paper that talked about this non-response bias in polling, where pretty much if you have somebody that has a scandal, they overperform their polling. And I've seen this at the state legislative level too. Because
the polling thinks they're going to do worse than they are.
Not that the polling thinks worse, but it's that you have maybe, I would say, average 2 or 3% of people who think, who want to either think that, okay, well, I don't want to be judged harshly by the pollster for saying that I'm going to vote for this scandal.
Despite the fact that the scandal occurred, I'm still going to vote for them. I don't want to admit that because the pollster is going to judge me for being a bad person.
Either they're afraid of judgment or they believe highly of themselves. There's you're going to have a response bias for people who say, oh yeah, I'm going to vote early. And then you still have a couple of percentage point who vote on election day because the people think very highly of themselves, right? Oh, I'm not going to vote for the scandal-plagued candidate. And then by election day, you have those 2 or 3% of people who go with their partisan loyalty. It's I'm just going to go straight Dem or straight Republican, whatever, right? And I think we saw a little bit of this in 2016 with Trump. I think that was kind of an example there for a federal level. So that's one kind of bias that happens in polling that can just happen with these specific candidates and candidate qualities that surround them. So, do you
think that's specific to an October surprise scandal? Would it matter if the scandal was months before?
It's a good question. No, I would say it could happen before. Like Susanna Gibson, that story in 2023. That came out on September 11th, that story.
Sort of close in time, though. November was the
Sure.
election, right? I mean, it's still close. I mean, it's not exactly October,
Sure.
but it's like it's still in the breadth.
And then Mark Robinson, there was that, the big one, the big story that came out in him in probably like September, October. They had a whole bunch of past controversial statements. And what's interesting about the Robinson race, and this was in North Carolina governor last year, is that I thought that he was going to overperform his polling, and he didn't. I think it's really one of the few examples to where you have a sort of controversial candidate who pollsters, don't have that response bias. But we saw that with the Jay Jones thing this year, right? You had a certain amount of respondents. I mean, this was the thing in our poll, is that we saw more people who said, yes, I've already voted. And they say who they're voting for governor and lieutenant governor and House delegates. And then there's a higher proportion of those who say in that first question, yes, I've already voted, but I'm undecided for the attorney general race. Right? In other words, I don't want to tell you who I voted for.
Right.
Because I'm ashamed.
Right.
So this is just kind of one of the things, and we had noted that in our poll, that we had saw this, that like there's probably going to be a bias, and that's what happened. But that's not why Jay Jones won. Jay Jones, even if the story didn't come out, or let me back up, even if the polling was accurate in not having what we would call shy Jay Jones voters, it still would have been Jay Jones still would have won, because polling underestimated Democrats and what the environment was going to look like. If we had gotten the environment right, which was only a hair bit redder than this year in our polling, then Jay Jones would have won by probably maybe 5 points. We had him up by 3.5 in our second poll. We had him up 5 in the first.
So my question is, again, should people trust that they're getting better? Because it seems like there's still a fair amount of skepticism from people participating, but then also just, hard to reach. I mean, I don't know. I struggle because I do feel like there is sort of a distrust, but I also feel like, I don't know, they're wrong a lot. You know what I mean?
I would disagree on that they're wrong a lot. I mean, in some places they're more difficult to poll, or some demographics more difficult to poll than others. For example, young voters, Hispanic voters, Asian voters, especially Asian voters. We had that issue this year. But look, polling in some years is really good, like in 2022 or 2018. Some years really, really bad, historically bad, like in 2020. But again, the pandemic really hurt them with that. Pollsters don't, some of them have an agenda. Some of them are a business and they have clients and everything, right? They got to put food on the table, especially those internal pollsters and whatnot who publish and have an agenda, which I think we saw a little bit this year from Republican pollsters, while Democratic pollsters, and this has pretty much been the case since 2020, have tucked their legs and headed for the hills because they are scared of being wrong and thus hurting their clientele. It's better to be wrong and being wrong privately than publicly.
That was going to be my next question. You have to be wrong or right publicly, given what you do. It's no option for you to be privately wrong or privately right. Like, you have to put all of this stuff out there. How do you take it when you're wrong? How do you process that? Do you take it personally? Does it hurt? I mean, do you kind of feel like you want to crawl into a ball for a few days and not show your face? Or do you just think okay, look, sometimes it happens, sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, I gotta let it brush off the dust and move on? What is your process?
It's a good question. Sometimes it stings a little, but at the end of the day, I'm just such a data nerd to where it's like, okay, where were these big upsets and why were these big upsets
So you go back to the numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And for example, I mean, it's really fun when I get to look at the state legislative level and look at our misses, because look, when you have a small staff like us and you don't have a contact in every single state. I have contacts in quite a lot of states, whether it be leadership or journalists and whatnot, who can flag these stories, right? You talked about okay, well, how are you going to factor in forecasting like something that can affect a race, like a scandal or something. There are ones that fall through the crack. For example, like there was this in 2022, we had a district as safe Republican in the Maine State House. And we didn't catch that one thing that made this Democrat really popular was that he was a big local ice cream shop owner and that he did really well. And so he kicked our butts. There's been other examples of that. There is a similar story with a Democrat pulling off a big upset in a safe Republican district in 2022, where it was like, you had like a scandal-plagued incumbent or something, right? So it's always fun and encouraging to see that, okay, we were wrong because people know this person and they do care about state government and they know what's going on in their state legislative race. And then other times it is just, based on like, okay, well, maybe we should have done this different in the formula or the model, right? So that's kind of a conversation Jack and I have begun to have right now of just like, okay, maybe we should weigh fundamentals more. We're going to be talking over, the next week or two and seeing what, we want to look at because we got 96 out of 100 seats right in the House of Delegates, which it's going to sound crazy, but like, it's okay. Like our goal was 97 because in 2017, I got 96 out of 100. In 2017 or 2021 on the forecast that I worked at C Analysis with Jack, which is Jack's first year, we got 96 out of 100. These governor years are very hard for the House of Delegates. Obviously, kind of a claim to fame here in Virginia that I've had with Jack is that, we got every single state legislative race in Virginia in 2023. Okay, that's great. That's easy. The reason why it's easy is because I think of Virginia elections, because we have elections every year, as a mile-long racetrack. First quarter mile is the presidential, second quarter mile is the gubernatorial, third quarter mile is the midterm, and then the fourth quarter mile is when all the seats in the General Assembly are up. The closer you are to the end of the track, the easier it is to see who's probably going to win.
Sure.
Because you have more data to work with.
Right. You've seen the other legs of the race, and you can kind of use that.
You have like the baseline of like the presidential, and then it's like, okay, well now you're getting these turnout differentials in these non-presidential years because one party is pretty much always more motivated than the other, right, for turning out. So, just the more data you have for what those electorates look like in those non-presidential years, the easier it is. So, and it was also in 2019, got 99 out of 100 seats in the House of Delegates. So it's pretty much how it always is.
If my kids brought home test scores anywhere near any of those numbers, I would not complain. Those are great numbers. I appreciate that you wanted to be at 97, but those are really good numbers. But one thing I thought about when I was interviewing Bill Bowling, he was talking about sort of the political landscape in Virginia, and he defined sort of Virginia politically as being center left. He's like the Virginia electorate's really center left. And, to move an election one way or the other, like it's important to like kind of know that like that's who you're dealing with. Would you characterize Virginia voters as such, as a state?
For the median voter, yes, more often than not.
Okay.
It's,
center left.
If you're thinking of a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being the most conservative individual, 0 being the most liberal, and 5 being pretty moderate, I would say Virginia is at a 4.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So
exactly what he said. Yeah,
right. Because we live in what is known, named after Anthony Downs, a Downsian electoral system, where you have these, you have one winner takes all, single member districts. And in such elections, you need to win over the median voter. Right. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be a moderate. Like you can say the same thing for like, okay, you need to win over a liberal voter in Vermont, right? Because that is the median voter, is that they are liberal. Or in a Republican primary, you need to win over, probably like a 7 out of 10 voter rather than that 4 out of 10, right?
Yeah.
So, you have to win over the middle. You need to make sure that you can win them over, and there's this big debate, always has been, of like, well, what kind of candidate do you need to win over the middle? right? Or like, do you need to win? Some people think you don't need to win over the median voter at all, but in fact, you do. There's just nothing in an electoral system like ours to where you can win more often than not by not winning over the middle. I mean,
by being on the outsides instead of being towards more
right,
the median. Yeah.
Right. No, you have like these minor parties, like, in party systems, you have like maybe a party with a niche issue, such as the Silver Party in Nevada in the late 1800s, right? They have this particular niche issue, and so they were absorbed by the Democrats when that came about. Sometimes you have minor parties who are just, they're like on the fringe or something. Those minor parties typically do better in proportional systems, proportional representation systems, such as like what you have in Europe, but we don't have that here.
Yeah.
So
overall, do you think Virginia is trending more left? Like, do you think
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So you think in
we've
future
trended
elections
leftward. We've trended leftward in every election. Trending meaning, you have like, okay, what was the swing from this presidential election to the next, versus what was the swing in Virginia? And I think the only instance maybe where we didn't trend at all was 2012, off the top of my head. But, I mean, Virginia has continually moved leftward by at least a couple points. And that was the case in 2024, right? The national popular vote got 5.5 or maybe like 6 points redder or something like that. Virginia got 4 points redder, right? So if it's R+6, and Virginia moved only 4 points rightward, then that's trending 2 points to the left, for example. And I think part of this is because of the coalition shifts that we've seen nationally. Democrats becoming increasingly the party of kind of white, wealthy, educated voters. I think that was mainly the mantra in 2024. But, this year, I mean, Democrats just got back all of their losses from 2024 with minority voters, Hispanics, Asians, or Hispanic Latinos or Asians, young voters as well. I mean, Trump won 18-year-olds by 1 point nationally last year. And in college campuses trended leftward in Virginia compared to the swing in Virginia this year. So Republicans made these big gains with these kind of more lower propensity, meaning that they vote less frequently, right? Maybe they only vote every 4 years, or maybe every 2 years, 3 years, something like that. Republicans made these big gains with lower propensity voters because they won on the issue of the economy. They campaign on the lowering the cost of living. But now, as far as every economic indicator, I mean, Virginia is in a recession. Some of these states are in a recession or near a recession. The unemployment rate hasn't really improved. And now you have like college graduates who have a higher unemployment rate than the national, right? And I think that's one part of why Democrats did better with young voters. And these minority groups who are much more working class, less likely to have a college education, who swung rightward in 2024, swung back to the Democrats because grocery prices haven't really gone down. The price of gas has gone down. That's one win for President Trump.
Yeah,
and he's noted that. But price of groceries hasn't. I mean, you can't reverse inflation,
right?
So I think that is part of it. I mean,
part
President
of the picture
Trump,
for this time. What?
Yeah.
At what point is it those voters are not convertible to the middle anymore? Is it, like if most liberal is a 0, a 1 or a 2, like would you predict that in like 5 years or 10 years Virginia is Vermont and it's like all the way
trying to predict anything 5 or 10 years from now is pretty much impossible. Anybody who can
think if
who can
anybody
do that
with
is selling you
your
snake oil.
ratios, with your odds, I don't know. I feel like I'm asking the right guy.
It's 4 years is a lifetime in politics.
That can happen. I mean, Youngkin did just win this last go round.
Right.
So, I mean,
exactly.
it's to this point, to your point, it's always been opposite of the White House has had favored odds in Virginia in the off-year elections. So I just wonder if it's trending left, how long that trend will continue.
Yeah,
if
it
at some point
depends
it's
on-
just at some point it's just left. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, not everything is set in stone. Look, in 2016, I had seen so much news coverage from pundits and everything on cable news who said, well, because of the demographics in this country, there may never be another Republican president. And well, what happened
Yeah.
a few weeks later?
Right.
Right.
And then he got a second
Demographics
term.
is not destiny.
Yeah. Right.
What matters is, are you going to continue to improve or lose demographics? And yes, how the country changes in demographics and whatnot. But, I mean, Latinos got much more Republican in 2024. Now they're moving more leftward. This is very much a swing demographic. Young voters might be a swing demographic, or maybe they're becoming a repeat of millennials and how liberal they're going to be by the time they're in their 30s and 40s, right? Because people get more conservative as they age. Typically, the only exception in recent history being millennials. Part of that is really just the recession, Great Recession. But yeah, so look, trying to predict what's going to happen in decades from now is very, very difficult. You can put your theories out there, but to say that what is going to happen 20 years from now, I think is someone selling snake oil.
All right. Well, I don't want to buy that, so I'll let you off the hook on that question. But I really have been fascinated by your thoughts, and for someone who's 26, you've done a lot so far. You've done a lot. Congratulations.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I've been doing this since I was 18. And it's getting less frequent that I get called kid. I think it was absolutely fair when I was like a teenager saying like, oh, he's a prodigy and a whiz kid, and now it's like my girlfriend jokes that I'm pushing 30. So
Still sounds young to
like,
me. I don't know. I'm an old lady, but I'm impressed. So congratulations on all your successes, and I'm sure we'll be watching to see, what's next for you, and stay in touch with us. Let us, maybe you'll come back again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good
Thank
luck.
you for all the work that y'all do as a local TV station and doing the work especially that helps inform people like
Yeah,
me.
we need to get you in here on election night so we can get some.
I'll be busy doing race calls.
I know you
can't.
will. You'll be like this with your head in your computer.
Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you next time on Untold.
Untold is a production of WTVR CBS 6. Executive produced by Mike Bergazzi and Katie Beck, directed by Nick Maharaj and Brock Taylor, and edited by April Harshman. Follow the show on Instagram at Untold_WTVR.